English translation 402nd contact. Saturday, 29th of October, 2005, 23:59 hours.
Sahlomi Edward.
Hello, Ptah. Just a minute before midnight. After our correction work with Bernadette, you said that in Sicily, Etna is once again the talk of the town. Is it coughing up lava again? You might as well say what else is going on in the world, if it is convenient for you.
I can. Yes. The first thing to mention is that days ago, an anti-authoritarian man, out of revenge, sank 2 open canisters of a pesticide called atrazine at the drinking water extraction point or drinking water pumping station in Untersee Bodensee near Sipplingen. A letter of confession from the man was sent to the authorities shortly afterwards. But they will only get to the bottom of the matter and remove the canisters in the next few days, after which everything will be made public. In France, the self-inflicted deaths of 2 colored youths fleeing from the police into an electric transformer and killed by the electricity will lead to weeks of riots and rampant violence. As a result, youth riots break out, which begin in the outskirts of Paris, continue for a long time, and spread to all parts of the country. In many cases, the young people are immigrants from Africa who, in their destructive rage, cause enormous damage and destruction throughout the country, as well as arson in schools, shops, businesses, etc., and also set fire to thousands of cars and buses. A human life will also be lost because the young ones beat a man so badly that he dies. And because the whole thing is not stopped quickly by security forces, a conflagration breaks out across the whole country by the young rioters who are rebelling against the government because its integration policy has failed. This then leads to the application of the emergency law passed in 1955, which allows curfews to be imposed. The rioting of young people in France will spread to a lesser extent to other European states, which will also lead to cars being set on fire. With regard to the volcano Etna, it must be said that it is already quite active inside. It is, after all, midnight, and so it is already Sunday, and it is producing heavy explosions in its magma chambers, which is leading to a series of lighter earthquakes. However, this does not result in any direct eruptions worth mentioning. Several lighter earthquakes will also shake Japan in the north and south next Monday, the 2nd of November, and on the 15th of November a more severe seaquake will occur in the sea in northern Japan, with a magnitude of 7.3, while the north of Pakistan will be shaken again by an earthquake of magnitude 6.0 on Sunday, the 6th of November. But this will not be the end, because further quakes are foreseeable, as well as the many deaths that will be unavoidable due to disease and cold, so the coming winter will claim many victims. On the evening of the 12th of November, you can turn your attention to an occurrence in Switzerland, because there will be an earthquake of magnitude 4.5 in the area of Möntal and Laufenburg on the Rhine, which will not cause any significant damage, although the event will be felt in large parts of the country and also far into Germany. Bolivia and Chile will also be shaken by a strong earthquake with a magnitude of 6.9 on the 17th-18th of November. And on the 19th of November, there will be another seaquake near Similu Island, about 200 kilometers off Sumatra, which will have a magnitude of 6.6. Vietnam will continue to be hit by the series of typhoons that have been multiplying there for some time, which will also cause loss of life. Exceptionally, at this late time of the year, a number of tornadoes are still occurring in the USA, causing all kinds of damage, such as in the U.S. states of Indiana and Kentucky, where a severe tornado will cause great damage and cause a number of deaths. However, a further series of tornadoes will cause far greater damage in the U.S. state of Iowa and in other U.S. states. Then, On the 9th of November, Amman, the capital of Jordan, will be hit by al-Qaeda terrorists from Iraq, with 3 heavy suicide attacks on 3 large hotels, which will claim around 70 lives and injure several hundred people. But a 4th attack will fail due to failure of the detonator. In Iraq, the torture of prisoners continues unabated, but for some time now no longer openly by the Americans, but for months now by Iraqis themselves, who are directly under the Ministry of the Interior. The suicide bombings also continue unabated and are being carried out in the old style, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of innocent humans, not only in Iraq, but also in Afghanistan. German and U.S. soldiers will also lose their lives in bomb attacks on various occasions.
If I can interrupt you, do you know what hotels it will hit? And you recently made a suggestion regarding the bird epidemic, which I interpreted as meaning that sooner or later the epidemic will mutate to such an extent that it will be transmissible from person to person. You spoke of a great probability, so I can imagine that it will only be a matter of time before it really happens. Is that right? Then another question in relation to the records of sea and earthquake strengths made by earthly seismographs. How accurate are these actually? Can we rely on these data? And a further question. What is actually going on with the AIDS epidemic? Is it still on the increase or not?
That was the meaning of my words, but there must not be any panic-mongering. And as for the hotels in Amman, one will be the big hotel on the Jebel Amman, where you did tiling work in 1963. Al-Rabijeh will be the other place. As far as the accuracy of the seismographs in use on the Earth is concerned, they give good results in rough form, while they are still somewhat lacking in finer and more accurate results. This means that measurement data can be inaccurate by up to 3 or even 6 units. Regarding AIDS, there is no reduction to be seen yet in this respect, quite the contrary, as it is spreading rapidly.
So in Jordan, it is places where tourists and business people from all over the world stay. But it is not surprising that Jordan is now also coming to the cash register of al-Qaeda, because the American friendliness of the Jordanians has always been a thorn in the side of many Arabs. I can imagine that the Jordanian Abu Musab al-Zarqawi could be the real perpetrator of the terrorist attack, out of revenge for being sentenced by a Jordanian court to several years in prison, which he had to serve. However, his hatred of the Americans, of the king and all his political team, and of part of the people, because they are in favor of the U.S. forces in Iraq and are throwing themselves at the U.S., certainly plays a part in this. The binding treaty between Jordan and Israel also plays a role, because al-Zarqawi hates the Israelis like the plague and considers the Jordanian government to be a traitor to its own people. With regard to the sea and earthquake measurement data, the Earth's seismographs therefore show smaller to larger deviations, so that the measurement technology still needs to be improved considerably.
That is all correct.
Then another question. Are you familiar with the so-called Germanic New Medicine?
It involves an absolutely misanthropic swindle, lies and deception as well as irresponsible charlatanry, through which many humans find death because they believe the criminal machinations of this alleged healing medicine, which an irresponsible doctor makes credible to his followers.
Aha, that is what I have heard. Then again a question. Apart from the differently dimensioned bioorganic flying entities, there are similar species on the Earth, which show the most different forms. Through your observation devices, I have seen some that look like giant strange snakes or insects, etc., and are flying through the atmosphere as fast as an arrow. In addition, there are innumerable disc-shaped and disc-shaped energy formations and bioorganisms of various sizes, which overshoot the boundaries of the atmosphere and also gather around space debris of the Earthlings and often accompany them for a while. Also, rockets are sometimes accompanied by these things and somehow appraised. Now the question whether these things are not seen by the men in the rockets or in the so-called space stations. One does not hear anything about it?
The existence of these bioorganisms and energy entities is well known, but no public explanations are given about them. Because the astronauts and all those who are involved with them do not know what these forms are, which have a certain energy intelligence, but are completely harmless. As I know, these bioorganisms and energy entities are called rods by observers.
Then I have another question. In the 1980s, Ketzel and I once talked about today's Europeans whose ancestors were gatherers and hunters in the Stone Age, but then became farmers through some immigrants. Unfortunately, I cannot remember where these immigrants came from. Do you know anything about them?
I can explain a few things to you. In the Stone Age, small groups of people came to Europe from the area of today's Anatolia, who already cultivated the land in their homeland and thus lived from agriculture. They were farmers. Especially in the area of today's Germany, France, and other countries, they lived together with the tribes of hunter-gatherers who were taught by the immigrants how to cultivate all kinds of food. With time, however, the immigrants died out, but the hunter-gatherers survived, and from then on, in addition to hunting and gathering, they devoted themselves to farming. From these tribes then emerged all those people whose distant descendants are now the ancestral Europeans.
And these tribes had nothing to do with any extraterrestrials. Which I mean, did they not trace back to any lines of extraterrestrial origin?
No.
So I wrote down a question that I could not answer when I was asked. Are there actually prophets on Era and on the worlds of the Federation? And if so, how do people feel about them? We have never talked about this before, so I therefore know nothing about it. But what I do know is that on Era there is only one direction of philosophy, and it is oriented towards the creational laws, which are taught by spiritual leadership, and are learned and followed by the people at their own discretion and will. Consequently, there are no sects and no gurus like here on the Earth. But what about the non-Playaran races of your Federation?
We have actually never talked about that. Yes, from time to time wise prophets appear here and throughout the Federation, giving prophetic instructions to the peoples, which are actually followed by every people. Our prophets, just like the earthly prophets, show us what negative things will happen in the future as a result of the behavior of the peoples if the wise advice is not followed, because all of our peoples have a great respect for them. This, besides the fact that they are also instructive in all things of the life, as well as in the creational and natural laws and recommendations, as is also proper to spiritual leadership and its duty. So in this respect we can speak of an equality of our and the earthly prophets. Our wise prophets are held in high esteem by all nations and are respected in venerability. Contrary to this, unfortunately, this has not been the case with the earth humans since ancient times, because they disregarded, scorned, mocked, slandered, and insulted their prophets. Some of them beaten, tortured, and even murdered the proclaimers. In this wise, everything has been equally maintained until today, and it is foreign to the attackers to recognize themselves and to create their own high values within themselves, whereby the prophets have not received much respect until today, but which you know from your own experience and from the living of it. Even in this day and age, the earth humans have not yet become more rational and curse their true wise prophets. While they hold all false prophets of both sexes in high esteem, and unhesitatingly lend their ears to their heresies, lies and deceptions, and erroneously believe the network of lies. A fact that is also true with regard to the falsehoods of religions and sects, as well as their preachers and gurus, etc., who exploit their believers at least financially, if not sexually, with young and beautiful women and children of both sexes being the particular victims. The false prophets and false wise men, as well as without exception. On the earth, all sect gurus and popes, as well as other religious superiors, sportsmen of all kinds, politicians, rulers and artists, etc., are moreover in the habit of bathing in the beliefs or adoration of the masses of their stupid worshippers and admirers, as well as believers and bondsmen, and thereby deluding themselves in their desire for glory as something special, which they are not by any means. This has been the case since ancient times and has not changed until today. True prophets and true wise men, on the other hand, never made a fuss about themselves, but were very modest and frowned upon being considered special. Their lives were dedicated to their mission, but not to prestige, not to mammon, and not to getting very badly out of control of one's good human nature. This is the case today, and will remain so for all time. And this is also the yardstick by which the earth humans can recognize and measure the true prophets and true sages. However, anyone who does not fit into this scheme can in good conscience be exposed as a false prophet or a false wise one, just as all those who allow themselves to be admired, worshipped and adored as religious leaders and sectarian gurus, or as sportsmen, artists, authors, musicians, politicians, and rulers, etc., can only be recognized as fame-seekers. And all those who cultivate this admiration, worship and veneration, etc., fall into the realm of those poor humans who are not able to work out any self-esteem in themselves, which is why they cling on to human idols, to which they fall hysterically and with frenetic howling and trample upon all self-esteem. It is impossible for these humans to build up self-esteem in themselves and to live it out, which is why they become pathologically attached to idols and are enthusiastic about them, to the point of fanaticism and self-abasement. And now, as far as the various numerous peoples of our Federation are concerned, it must be said that some of them are connected to the philosophy of the creation and thus also to the teaching of the Spirit, aka creation energy teaching, while others are only on the way to becoming so or still represent purely human ideological ideas, but have nevertheless developed a very high level of evolution.
Thank you. Then I would like to discuss something with you privately now, if you still have time.
Of course.
It is about